Koto kata. Nau mai piki mai ki tēnei hui. Warm greetings everyone. Kia ora, malo e taulava, nisa bolominaka, taloha ni, taloha lava, namaste, and all the beautiful greetings that you participants represent from your diverse ethnic backgrounds. On behalf of the Health Promotion Forum, it's wonderful to welcome you to our hui, to our workshop today. As you can see, the title is From Rotorua to Abu Dhabi, Indigenous Knowledge and Planetary Health. And the theme represents a long journey that was culminated in Abu Dhabi a month ago at the 25th World Conference of the International Union in Health Promotion that was held in the United Arab Emirates. And our speakers today were some of the delegates from Aotearoa, New Zealand, who attended. And there are two parts to this workshop today. The first one is that we share our personal reflections and highlights briefly, each one of us, of what we saw was significant, important, and relevant to Aotearoa, what we learned from the global level, but also equally important, what are some of the things that we have contributed to the conference. A special welcome to our guest speakers joining us, Professor Louis Signal, Dr. William Puloka from the University of Otago, and along with the other speakers, Deputy Executive Director of the Forum, Leanne, Eruera, and myself, Sione, the Executive Director of the Health Promotion Forum. But before we begin, let us begin with a karakia. Eglele, o mauhanga ke awhiona, koe uhi, koe ngā aue maho ino e pongpong koe ni, koe ako, koe uhi, ke tokon ki hokakai, I mamani o nge koe ke whakahoko whinangalo I he langi. We come from different parts, but our unity in care and concern for the well-being of our one planet and our one human family brings us together to learn, to share, and to work out ways how to address the challenges that our family here in Aotearoa and our global human family face in these challenging times in our journey in our social evolution as humanity. So as I said earlier, there are two parts. The first one is the reflections, and the second part will be a brief version of a subplenary session that we shared in Rotorua, in Abu Dhabi at the conference. Again, warm welcome, everyone. And without further ado, I would like to invite our speakers to share briefly. And in the order, we start with Dr. William Puloka, and then Professor Louis Signal, and then Leanne, Eruera, and then myself. Over to you, William.
Maravido Sione and Prophetai Pia Malo Behonga Ia Ihe Avarafofa Tawiai. Greetings to all of you and welcome one and all. And it has been a very exciting time, especially when we plan to go to this far away place. The excitement was there, you know, a bit of unknown in many ways. But when we eventually got there, I think it's like that. What we witnessed was much better than what we heard before we arrived there. There are a couple of things that I want to reflect on as Sione have asked us to have a reflection on the meeting in Abu Dhabi. Of course, this is sort of a continuation of a journey that we started here in Rotorua. And then overall, it was a very good conference. It has its own unique features. And just like any other meetings, it has the good, the bad, the ugly, and all that. And it's of course up to us to where our focus is and what things that we get from. But for me, the um the the theme that was raised in Rotorua really was the focus and calling the attention for action in incorporating and uh, understanding and appreciating the contribution and the interconnectedness of our well-being as a human uh, species directly related to the well-being of the planet, the other form of life. Unfortunately, we have been so homophobic in a way that I think when God decided to give us to have dominion on earth, we took it as being more using all the resources for our own benefit and lost the respect to the very thing that continue to sustain us. So my reflection in Abu Dhabi, being to Abu Dhabi, I think Abu Dhabi embodied the resilience and ingenuity of the human mind in adapting themselves to the environment which rather harsh. Abu Dhabi is a desert, sand. The heat is amazingly, you know, we go to sauna here. We paid a lot of money to go to in Abu Dhabi. You just walk outside and you have free um, heat therapy. But I thought I saw that the amazingly how people adapt themselves, the kind of clothing they wore, the kind of uh, things they do, the kind of building, and out in the desert where there's no water, the sun is so hot, and yet they adapt themselves and they adopt whatever it takes so that they can continue not just to live but thrive in such an environment. And to me, that was really what we are trying to do here to appreciate Mother Nature and instead of just trying to change everything out there to suit ourselves, but we ourselves, we must appreciate the the importance of our environment and therefore we must adopt and adapt to the environment as well as at the same time we want the environment to suit to what it is. So I saw in Abu Dhabi what they have done and they are able to adopt and therefore um, the lives and livelihood. Uh, it's a very prosperous place. But who would have thought that out in the desert, crops can be grown, water can be generated, and energy from the sun is utilized. And we saw it in Abu Dhabi. And to me, that is something that I come away with it and attending. Besides everything else that the topics and the intellectual stuff that was going on, but to me, this is my reflection in attending the turning from Rotorua to Abu Dhabi in this conference. Thank
Yeah,
you very much.
thank you, William. And you're right. The Abu Dhabi conference reflects the hard work done starting from Rotorua, and it's a process. It takes time, but also your reflection on the harsh environment in Abu Dhabi, and yet they not only thrive, as a community, as a nation, United Arab Emirates, but also their ability to convert a harsh environment into a livable, environment and community. Thank you for that. Let's move on to Professor Louis Signal. Louis, your reflection on Abu Dhabi.
Kia ora koutou. I must say it was a great privilege to be there, and an absolute thrill to have Sione there as the president of the union leading the conference. And congratulations to you once again, Sione, for a magnificent conference and for your fantastic leadership of the union over the last few years. I would say that, as always, I'm struck at those meetings by the a range of people that are there from the multiple nations globally. And there was a very strong presence from Africa and from the Arab nations this time, more than we would sometimes see when the conferences were in other parts of the world. You see that nation states, communities are practicing health promotion on a daily basis and doing extremely good work in this area, which they were able to share. And also I was struck by the breadth of the topics, the issues that the community of health promotion is engaged in. It has got a very wide brief. So it's always a fascinating conference. You can find so many topics that are ones that you're interested in, but also things that provoke your thoughts and encourage you to think in different ways. The other thing I was really struck by was the wealth of the UAE. I had no idea just how wealthy it was. I've just been trying to Google earlier just how much money they have, but there's a sovereign wealth fund, and they certainly have well over $1 trillion in assets in the sovereign wealth fund. And that is borne out by the fact that they actually don't pay any taxes in UAE. The people in that live in the Emirati, they pay no taxes because they are such a wealthy nation that they can afford to function without taxes. So it is really a completely different kind of nation state. I suppose it meant for me then to think about, well, if there is this wealth and there is clear talent in UAE and probably in many of the other Gulf states as well, we maybe have been far too blinkered in not drawing on that talent in those areas and the problem solving that they can do, and of course in the wealth that they have that they can put to any public health issue that is of concern. So again, that made me start to think, well, should we be doing much more collaboration with not just UAE but the wider Gulf states, and what are those opportunities to fund research and problem solving that which would support the planet. So those are my reflections. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Louise. And you're, of course, right about the tax system there, or the absence of, being taxed. And it's amazing how they convert their resources, not only to help Abu Dhabi, but in a collaborative way, many ways, to reach across the world and to help others. And the conference is one of those ways of collaboration. Thank you, Louise. Let's move on to Leanne Eruera, our Deputy Executive.
Kia ora, Sione. Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Leanne Eruera tōku ingoa, he uri ahau no te whare tapu o ngā puhi. I whānau ahau ki kai taia, ka tupu ake ahau ki roto i tō mātou tūpuna whaia a muri whenua. I tēnei wā, I noho ana ahau me aku tamariki mokopuna hoki ki te kāmo, kei roto o whangarei. Nō reira, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Kia ora, everyone. It's really lovely to be here with you all today to contribute to our shared knowledge in the area of Indigenous knowledge ecosystems as settings for health promotion innovation. So wonderful reflections, William and Louise, and I totally support and agree with all of them. I have a few brief reflections today based on my time in Abu Dhabi. One of my interest areas is the intersection of technology and health. So I was particularly drawn to sessions and projects exploring AI, data, and digital systems in health promotion. And I guess to summarize sort of three key takeaways for me were that community-led AI solutions demonstrated what is possible. One such example was the use of it was called a Butterfly app, a portable ultrasound tool, which is being used to reach rural communities in Africa. And what it does is it enables expectant mothers to receive their scans with AI assisting in determining things like due dates and fetal viability, with the potential for broader diagnostic use in the future. And these expectant mums would otherwise not have been able to make it into clinic, missing out on essential prenatal care that would support healthy pregnancies and safe deliveries. So tools like this help reduce barriers to access by bringing critical services directly to the community, overcoming challenges like distance and cost and limited infrastructure. So that for me was one example of a relatively low cost but high impact innovation that can help close those critical gaps in healthcare, particularly prenatal care and access. Another key reflection for me was how AI and data convergence are transforming health, and this was particularly evident in Abu Dhabi. So epigenetics, wastewater, and environmental data are feeding kind of predictive platforms. And one example of this was given by M42, which is a global health champion powered by artificial intelligence technology. And together, genomics, epigenomics, wastewater, and electronic health record data, they represent sort of a convergence of biological, environmental, and clinical information. And when you combine that with AI analysis, so you've got an AI analyzing all those sets of data, it can really help shift health promotion towards more anticipatory and proactive approaches, and tailoring interventions to people and communities before issues even fully emerge. So I think for me personally, those data sources are really transformative tools. They're being used and deployed in Abu Dhabi, I believe, at the moment. And I think if integrated effectively, that the data can be used to inform governments for smarter policy and health planning, for example, and support healthcare to move more into that prediction and prevention space. So that was a key takeaway for me as well. And lastly, just to kind of balance those 2 points I've mentioned, I think that for me, data governance will be an increasing health equity issue. So who collects that data, who owns it, who accesses it, and uses that health data will matter even more so in the future. And also, especially for me, thinking about Indigenous rights and whether or not there are sufficient guardrails in place to safeguard personal data. So I'll end my personal reflections there. Thank you, Sione.
Thank you, Leanne. Those are wonderful points about the role of technology in health and especially in health promotion. And those, two examples there that you gave, but also the issue of governance and inequities in governance and ownership of data and so on and so forth, and the importance of make sure that things we do are ethical and equitable, and especially in our case here for Aotearoa New Zealand, Indigenous well-being, Indigenous rights, and Indigenous peoples and knowledge, as well. So I have a few slides for my reflection on the conference, as the theme of our workshop today clearly articulates. It's about a journey that started in Rotorua with the Health Promotion Forum, representing our workforce, our health promotion sector, and all the 100 members or more of the Health Promotion Forum of New Zealand. Together, we have been able to contribute our local experience and knowledge to the world level, and we learn a lot, in return from that. And as has been mentioned in Abu Dhabi, very successful conference in terms of the scientific program, the social program, hospitality was outstanding. Some 2,000 plus participants from across 80 plus countries in the world, especially as Luis mentioned, a big representation from the Middle East and India and Africa, of course, and nations around that region. And it's the first time for IUHPE to move out of its comfort zone into a new region of the world in its 74-year history, and to become truly global. These are some slides, some pictures from our engagement in Abu Dhabi. The photo at the top left is the delegation from New Zealand, and the bottom left is a picture from our workshop, and the rest are the sessions during the conference. As has been mentioned, it's a long journey of more than 10 years. It started in 2007, 2010. 2007, we attended, Luis, myself, and my predecessor, Alison Blacklock, Dr. Alison Blacklock. We were in Vancouver for the IUHPE World Conference there. And then 2010, we met up with Leanne in Geneva at the IUHPE conference there. And the idea of perhaps one day that this region can host the conference came into mind. 2016, IUHPE accepted that we host a conference. So Luis and I were in Shanghai at the WHO World Congress, and have a motion to promote the conference and represent Aotearoa. And we met up with Dr. Saya Piukala at the time, who was Minister of Health in Tonga. And as you know, Dr. Piukala is now the WHO Regional Director for the Western Pacific region. In Paris, we signed a contract in 2016. In 2017, William and I were in Melbourne to promote the conference. And then it happened in Rotorua, 2019, that center row, bottom picture, you can see not only Sione Duri, but also, among others, say Michael Marmot, the WHO 2008 social determinants report that he chaired, and many other colleagues, including my successor, Professor Louis Potvin, second from the right there, talking about well-being of humanity in Rotorua. And that's a photo representing that wonderful conference we had in Rotorua. And there were two documents, as you might recall, the legacy documents on the planetary health and the one on Indigenous well-being and our contribution to planetary health and well-being. We formed a global working group. That's the picture on the top right, some of the members there, and they're the ones who are spearheading, promoting and advancing planetary health and Indigenous knowledge, Indigenous well-being, Indigenous rights within IUHPE. 2022, that's the center picture, right column. That's our team from the Health Promotion Forum and WHO. We were invited to present at the Montreal Conference of IUHPE after we were invited to present in 2021 at the World Health Conference, World Health Promotion Congress 2021, where we also input into the Geneva Charter for Well-being. And so, as some of you know, when you read the Geneva Charter for Well-being, you'll find that Indigenous knowledge is in there, Indigenous rights, Indigenous leadership, and planetary health and well-being. And the understanding of health is expanded to include ecological well-being and spiritual well-being as well. So a long journey, but we have been able to contribute leadership to the global level, our knowledge on planetary health and Indigenous knowledge, and we have grown our network. And so we are in the fare of global health promotion and well-being, planetary well-being, and co-construct, the steps moving forward into the future. And we are very fortunate here in Aotearoa, and of course, because of creativity, it allows the Health Promotion Forum to focus on the national level, but enables us to also contribute to our world community. At the same time, make sure that the impact is at a global, is at a local level. So overall, some benefits, not only to co-benefits, that is in IUHPE, but also we contribute to the World Health Organization and also to the Planetary Health Alliance work. Planetary Health Alliance is a leading international organization in planetary well-being, and we have been invited to be a member, and we contribute to that, in addition to other spaces and issues of health that the forum has been invited to contribute to. So overall, that's what we have been able to contribute not only to Abu Dhabi, but over the last 10 years, all for the well-being of the world, but also focus on Aotearoa at the same time. And we bring back knowledge and network experience in leadership, including, of course, the accreditation framework that we are working on at the moment. There are some legacy statements, as already mentioned, where our contributions have been embedded, and it's a foundation that the next generation of promoters here in Aotearoa and other parts of the world can contribute to. So that is my reflection, rather long compared with the others, but I want to capture the long journey that has culminated in Abu Dhabi. And it has been mentioned, it has been a very successful conference. It has been a great honor for Aotearoa to lead IUHPE the last 3 years at the regional level, together with Luis and Williami and Leanne and others. And we hope that we represent our collective voice. So towards the end of our workshop, it will be wonderful to hear from you what you think that we should do next. Williami, I conclude here our part 1 of our workshop, our reflections on Abu Dhabi. I would like to hand over to you. You were the moderator in Abu Dhabi. I would like to put you on the spot and hand it over to you to moderate our second part. And
Okay, thank you very much, Sione. And I think we can sense your passion about the many things that you have tried to cover. And even though you say that it's you talk much longer than compared to the other speakers, but that's just a reflection of the richness of what you have contributed to the whole work of health promotion, not just here in Aotearoa, but also in the global scene. So the next part, of course, we're just gonna give you a mini version of what actually we did in Abu Dhabi. And that is to invite the speakers to give you a very summarized, much more succinct version of what they were presenting to the rest of the attendants who were in Abu Dhabi. And since you have just talked, Sione, should you start, or should I ask one of the ladies to start, and you continue, or you continue on from your slides?
Yeah, I'm happy to
just continue over there. Okay, Sione, and I think we'll touch a bit later, but actually, yes, let's welcome back Sione again to share some of the things that he actually shared with the rest of the world who attended the Abu Dhabi conference. Malo, Sione.
Yeah, so thank you, everybody. I'm putting up my slide. I hope it will come up soon. I'm not a tech whiz. I'm a non-digital native. It seems to be coming up okay.
Yeah.
So as mentioned earlier, as mentioned earlier,
Sorry, can you put in the presentation form? Okay.
yeah, I think this is
Yeah, thank you.
the front end. Our subplenary focused on the ecosystems as a settings for health promotion. And it was a contribution to the overarching theme of the conference, settings for planetary health and well-being. And our colleagues who are here with us today are familiar with the settings approach in health promotion. It started with healthy cities, and in the Pacific, they adopted it to healthy islands. Here in Aotearoa, we adopted health promotion schools, and then we innovated, and we have health promotion marae, health promotion universities, health promotion workplaces, and health promotion churches and health promotion communities. So it's all the social spaces that we can think of under the sun. We take health promotion there, all the knowledge, all the skills, all the tools in health promotion to ensure that such a setting, whether it's a school, whether it's a university, a hospital, a community, or an island in the Pacific for that matter, is a healthy setting, a healthy space for all those who are in that space. And so what we propose at the conference is, in addition to the social spaces, we should pay attention to the natural spaces, to the environmental spaces, and we select ecosystems. An ecosystem is an autonomous part of a bigger system, say water, soil, plants, air. Those are ecosystems or ecological systems. And the autonomous parts make up the whole system. And because it is a system, if one part is not healthy, the whole system will be affected. Humanity has been focusing over the last 300 years on the human systems, the social systems, our economies, our cities, our trade, our governance, and we forget that we are all building these social formations, these human constructs within the natural systems. And now the natural system, Mother Nature, is not healthy. And Mother Nature is telling us in a very sick way that she is very ill, and if we are not paying attention to her, we will all perish together. Mother Nature will be able to recover, but not we mere mortals. So settings is very important, especially natural settings for planetary health. But what is planetary health? It's about our focus in trying to address not only the well-being of humanity, but also the natural systems. That's part of the definition we came up in Rotorua, but we also combined that with the definition of the Rockefeller Foundation Lancet. If you refer to 2015 statement from the Lancet, it has been published. I'm sure many of our colleagues here are familiar with that. The Planetary Health Alliance has advanced it to a more sophisticated level, and they call it, as you can see on the definition, it's a solutions-oriented transdisciplinary field and social movement. And it's about addressing human disruptions in our natural systems and human systems. I have 3 points to make in my remaining 6 minutes. So the first one is the argument of this workshop, ecosystems as settings for promoting planetary health and human well-being. Then I'll touch briefly on what are the challenges that we are currently facing in terms of the well-being of the planet and humanity, and then look at some strategies that are already in place, some of which I already mentioned in my sharing earlier. So ecosystems, these are the living systems that regulate our climate, purify our air, water, pollinate our crops, and sustain biodiversity. And indigenous peoples, with their knowledge for millennia, as acknowledged in the United Nations, have been contributing to this. And we understand the oneness, the interdependence of nature and humanity. One cannot live without the other, especially we human beings. Not only that, but remember, we are not the only living beings in the world, in the planet. There's also the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, and the mineral kingdoms, and all of that. But we know today that we are being threatened. The environment has been threatened, and we have at least 6 of the 9 Earth systems boundaries, or the 9 planetary boundaries. We have exceeded beyond it. We have damaged that, and this is what scientific colleagues have put together in the report of the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, have submitted quite a number of times in its reports to the UN, warning heads of states, and especially ministers of health, to focus not only on human well-being, but also the well-being of humanity. And focusing on ecosystems is important as part of addressing the whole well-being, the well-being of the whole planetary system. And it's very clear with that statement, made by Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, in 2022 in New York. The state of the planet is broken, and we are waging war. That is why humanity is waging war on Mother Nature, and it's a suicidal pathway. And we know today, not only we are making war of nature, but we are, having war with each other. And in my view, not only we have to make peace with Mother Nature, we need to make peace with each other. And we know that's the first condition in the 1986 Ottawa Charter, the first prerequisites, the first determinant of health and well-being. And during all these times, Indigenous knowledge is the one that has been holding up the importance of the well-being of Mother Nature, the well-being of the planet. And as Guterres said, we must respect, heed their voices of Indigenous peoples, reward their knowledge, and respect their rights. In the Geneva Charter for Wellbeing 2021, it takes it further that we need to center not only the knowledge of Indigenous peoples, but also their leadership. Guterres reminds us, as the Geneva Charter also reminds us, 2021, that it's more than just climate change and environmental calamities. It's a complex interrelated crisis, the convergence of geopolitical conflicts, ecological disasters, economy and trade and commerce, and of course, these things result in the global health challenges that we are facing as humanity, pandemics like COVID-19, and so on and so forth. I would like to suggest, and I'm not alone in this, there are a number of voices around the world who are now pointing to the fact that, in essence, this is a moral crisis, and it's what I call the fifth global determinant and challenge for humanity. And to some degree, the Geneva Charter refers to this and calls for a reset of our human values and our ethical principles. It boils down to we being very greedy about our limited resources, our collective resources. As one wise person said, there's enough for everyone's need, but there's not enough for everyone's greed. So in summary, there are 4 strategies that I put forward. The first one, there are recommendations, there are strategies are already in place, like the Geneva Charter for Wellbeing, and of course the Ottawa Charter 1986. In fact, in the Ottawa Charter, the environment is mentioned as one of the priority areas that we should focus on. And so that's the Geneva Charter, reminding us the importance of the environment. There are the Rotorua statements. The IUHPE have got its own position statement on the well-being of the planet and the contribution of Indigenous peoples along with their rights. Of course, the Planetary Health Alliance has got the global planetary health roadmap and actions, and Sao Paulo Declarations 2021. Most of all of these statements, the Health Promotion Forum on our behalf has been able to contribute to those. So there is the first recommendation. The second one is to raise our consciousness to the collective level, to the global level. Our challenge is that we have the them and us framework embedded in our heads and in our heart as well. If we rise to a level of seeing us as parts of that one system I mentioned earlier, the whole planet is one system. If we redesign and reimagine from that interdependence and oneness, our social reality will change, our strategies will be different, and we will be able to come up with solutions that are divisive and inequitable. Happy to elaborate on that. And the third one is to adopt the thesis of this presentation, adopt ecosystems as foundational settings for planetary health and human well-being. There have been elders and wise sages that have walked this path way before, and we need to make sure that we continue that same walk towards well-being and ensure that it's a healthier planet and healthier world for the next generation. My granddaughter always reminds me that it's not just about me and my generation, it's about her generation as well. So I think working together will leave a healthier, happier world for all the grandchildren of the world. Yeah, I mean, that's me. There are some references there, and I'll pause there and hand it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sione, and that's it's always a very, very rich and what a big feast that you have prepared for us, and we thank you for all those words of wisdom. And I'll elaborate a little bit later if we have time at the end. But let's just join and give a little hands up, thumb up for Sione for this presentation, and we move into our next speaker. And I would like to invite Leanne. And Leanne, of course, she will tell you what she's talking about, but she's such a bright star rising up in our horizon. And please, let's welcome Leanne.
Kia ora, Viliami. Thank you very much. Let me just get this on slideshow. Okay, so as part of our subplenary in Abu Dhabi, I spoke about Indigenous knowledge with a focus on the Māori ecosystem as a setting. I talked about a structural innovation from here in Aotearoa. Some of you may be familiar with that, but I'll briefly revisit that today also. And I shared a practical example of how the Māori ecosystem can be applied to a technological innovation, and time permitting, I'll recap that as well today. So I know many of you on this call will already have quite a strong grasp of the Māori worldview, so I'll keep this part brief just to set the scene. In the Māori worldview, everything in nature is connected, from Ranginui and Papatuanuku to their many children, the atua, who each hold responsibility for different domains of the natural world. And I've just named a few there on the slide. We are connected to the natural world, or the planet, through whakapapa that traces all life back to the beginning of creation. Māori ecosystems reflect deep spiritual connections that guide how communities care for each other, make decisions, and live in balance with the planet, and it's upheld by systems of relational practice. Core concepts that I focused on were mana, tapu, utu, and whanaungatanga. Whilst I expect that most of you will also be familiar with these concepts, I'll offer a few brief reflections for those less familiar with the Māori worldview. The first one is mana, which is derived from genealogical relationships. It is enduring and spiritually grounded. It is lived and actively expressed through relationships, responsibilities, and actions. Mana can either grow or diminish based on how we honour our relationships with people, the land, ancestors, and atua. The second concept is called tapu. Tapu is a state of sacredness that serves to regulate behaviour, helping maintain balance between the physical and the spiritual realms. Utu is aimed at maintaining balance and promoting harmony, with reciprocity being a key driver, and it is again a regulator of conduct. And lastly is the concept of whanaungatanga, which I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with, but can be used to describe how everything is connected. It can also be used to observe hierarchy among human relationships, and it also governed the behaviour between one another and the environment. If you are unfamiliar with the Māori worldview, if you can remember two key things. The first is that it is based on whakapapa, or genealogy, between humanity and the natural environment, or the planet. And secondly, that it is cloaked in the spiritual web of relationships and laws of mana, tapu, utu, and whanaungatanga. I shared examples of structural innovation in New Zealand where Māori law has influenced English law, recognising Indigenous governance systems by giving legal personhood to the natural world. Te Eruera, cared for by the Tūhoe tribe, was granted legal personhood under the Te Eruera Act in 2014. Similarly, the Whanganui River, our third longest river in Aotearoa, deeply sacred to the Whanganui tribe, was recognised as a legal person through the Whanganui River Claims Settlement Act in 2017. Both laws confer on these ecosystems the rights, powers, duties, and liabilities of a legal person, establishing a new model of environmental governance that reflects Indigenous worldviews and restores authority to local guardians. And more recently, in January 25, Taranaki Maunga was also granted legal personhood through a new settlement between government and 8 tribes with ties to the Maunga. So how might legal personhood reshape health promotion frameworks by shifting focus to ecosystem-centred governance? Well, firstly, having legal personhood reframes ecosystems not just as resources to be managed, but as living entities with their own rights and mana. It recognises relationality between humanity and the planet. And for health promotion, it shifts the environment from being an external factor to embedding it as part of our well-being. It makes everyone accountable to the ecosystems themselves, thus supporting well-being outcomes. So to bring this concept of ecosystem-centred wellbeing into practice, I'll share a local example that combines Indigenous values and emerging technology. In Taitokero, I explored how drone technology is being used in sectors like the scientific research, agriculture and forestry sectors, for example. Using the Māori ecosystem framework and grounded in those 4 key concepts of mana, tapu, utu and whanaungatanga, we looked at how drones are being used across iwi interest areas here in Taitokero, asking the question about what is being recorded, where and why. The focus was on areas of sites of cultural significance, including iwi regions, marae, meeting places and sacred places such as wāhi tapu. This first image here shows the number of drone flights over an approximate 1-year period, a total of 1,543 logged flights. And of particular interest were the purpose, the location, and the elevation. I then overlaid the drone flights with iwi interest areas and marae to create the second image. The circular shapes are still the drone locations, and larger circles indicating higher elevations. The square shapes representing marae, the red square shapes, and the base layer representing the iwi areas. So the work is still evolving, with some parts still under discussion, and not everything is shown here today, but the intention is to support hapu and iwi in their roles as kaitiaki through awareness and education as an example of what is happening in their ecosystems. It's also an invitation to open respectful conversations between the drone operator community and local hapu or iwi, so that any sharing of knowledge or access happens in a way that protects the land, the people and the integrity of those ecosystems. So finally, a few key messages about how to integrate ecosystems as settings for planetary health. One of them for me is to just simply cultivate the space for diverse ways of knowing, including Indigenous knowledge ecosystems, and for us here in Aotearoa, especially Mātauranga Māori. It offers distinct ways of seeing and relating that can shape stronger and more holistic responses to environmental and health challenges. Secondly is to recognise Indigenous knowledge as distinct, with the power to support other knowledge systems and inform broader collective efforts in planetary health. Again, Mātauranga Māori should be considered as having its own depth and authority that can either lead or support other knowledge systems. And then finally, I know, Sione, your third point was adopting ecosystems, and it's similar to what I've mentioned here, is about that shift from human-centred planning to ecosystem-centred governance, where decisions are made in relationship with land, water, and living systems. Kia ora.
Thank you very much, Leanne, and what a beautiful way of putting into a more practical way all the theoretical stuff that we've been discussing, and thank you very much for that. And for the interest of time, let's move on and invite Professor Louise Signo to give her korero, and then we can the rest of the time, then we can have a little discussions. Thank you, Louise.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you to both Sione and Leanne for your very thoughtful comments. Sione challenged me to think about the role of non-Indigenous peoples in using Indigenous knowledge, or how to promote planetary health. What is the role of non-Indigenous peoples in this space? And so I was talking about what I regarded as the sort of key imperatives for us. Why should non-Indigenous peoples have a role here? And that is, first of all, the moral issue, the moral imperative that, as you well know, Indigenous peoples in colonial countries worldwide suffer poorer health, and that while that plays out differently in different contexts, the fundamentals of a process of oppression, and fundamentally poor our health outcomes are a result. So I think, first of all, there's an imperative issue for us as non-Indigenous peoples to take a role in this area of promoting Indigenous knowledge. Secondly, I think there's a political imperative because colonisation is, as you're well aware, about power. And I want to particularly focus on knowledge and therefore research to gain knowledge. It has a long history as a tool of colonisation, and Linda Tuhiwai-Smith makes that point in her wonderful book on decolonising methodologies. There's a long history of suppressing Indigenous knowledge in Aotearoa, such as banning of the use of the language and the Tōhanga Suppression Act here in Aotearoa, and many others globally. There are political decisions taken in the past and still currently where we're still this year being grievously debating the role of Te Tiriti in our lives here in this country. We've also, as non-Indigenous peoples, as beneficiaries of the unearned privilege of being colonisers, as in my case, a beneficiary of my whiteness, we have a choice to make. We can work for change, for redress, for liberation. And in my view, if we don't act, we remain complicit in the atrocity of colonisation. So that's the kind of political imperative, I think, for non-Indigenous peoples to take action in this space. Thirdly, the legal imperative is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which is a commitment to uphold the rights of Indigenous peoples, which we have signed and then didn't sign over recent times. But we have that absolute global imperative as a nation state, in my view, to implement international law on the rights of Indigenous peoples to ensure that they attain the highest standard of physical and mental health, and that we take the necessary steps to realise that as is their right. And another point I'd make there is one that Mason Jury makes so very importantly, is that Indigenous peoples have the right to be healthy as Indigenous peoples, not just healthy in terms of the colonisers. And certainly we've seen some shifts in that. And fourthly, the last point, the last imperative is a planetary imperative. I think, as Leanne and Sione have so clearly laid out, Indigenous knowledge has so much to contribute to planetary health. So then you might ask, well, how then would we as non-Indigenous peoples have a role here? And I drew on some work of the Health Research Council and of Branley and Bolton, Amohia Bolton, on the ethics of care and transformational research practice, to think about some principles here, or some tikanga that we can use to guide our work. The first one is the principle of tika, of using the right processes. And I think we need to understand, in order to do that, the process of colonisation itself. We need to know and understand our past and present processes of colonisation and how it plays out for us here in Aotearoa and in those other colonial countries. It is far-reaching and, as you well know, ever-present. We also need to understand how racism works, document that racism, and find ways to address it, to stop it. And Kamara Jones is a particularly thoughtful thinker and writer in this area, if you're wanting some more reading to do here. Understanding the colonial history of research and knowledge capture is critical, as is reflecting on what this means for how we work, how you work, how that affects our Indigenous colleagues and Indigenous communities more broadly. So that understanding that process of colonisation. Secondly, we also need to use decolonising research processes, and that includes Indigenous leadership, asking questions of importance to Indigenous peoples, being guided in that area of decolonising methodologies by people like Linda Tuhiwai-Smith. Thinking also of the issue of equal explanatory power makes sure that we can say as much about Māori or other Indigenous communities as we can about the colonisers. Too often when we say, oh, we just couldn't get the right sample size, and therefore we don't have the power to say what we need to explore the issues. We must have equal explanatory power through all of our research. and consider issues of data sovereignty. So that's the first point around tika, or the right processes. The second one is around manaakitanga, or reciprocity, building that research capacity in our Indigenous communities. Thirdly, the issue of whakapapa that Leanne spoke of, and we need to work with our Indigenous colleagues to support their leadership. But we must be humble in the work that we do. We must understand our role in that process, and in the process of colonisation, and how to make them how we can work best. Often, we can do things like helping navigate the colonial systems within which we are still so often required to work. We, as the colonisers, often have good knowledge of those systems and how to make them work. We can also do things like administration, grant writing, reporting, project management, those things that are time-consuming, that often wrap our Pacific and Māori providers up in knots, and let them get on with the business. We must be collaborative, we must listen, and we must know when it's not our business, when it's time for us to get back into our own box and leave it to others. We also need to think of the concept of mana, that is upholding the rights of Indigenous peoples, as I've said in the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of the Child, and just that the rights of Indigenous peoples, and just that moral obligation as human beings to respect the rights of others. We also need to work for systems change in this area of mana, institutionalising Indigenous knowledge. We can do that as teachers. We can, in terms of the work that we do, if we're teaching, in terms of training Indigenous researchers, in terms of the kind of research that we propose and the ways that we work within those research proposals. Within our universities, we can be spokespeople for taking a strong approach to promoting Indigenous knowledge. And so I've been very proud that the University of Otago is signing a mana-to-mana agreement with Ngāi Tahu, which is a fundamental agreement about the governance of the university, which is a co-sharing arrangement. And again, we need to be thinking of things like the government commitment. And I know some of you are working in government at the moment, and I know it's a particularly difficult space. But take whatever opportunities you can that are safe for you to take, to try and promote Indigenous knowledge. So to conclude, there's 4 reasons why I think non-Indigenous people should have a role in this place, albeit a very thoughtful and considered and collaborative one. That is moral, political, legal, and planetary. There are imperatives in all of those areas. And how we can do that is in understanding colonisation and racism, undertaking decolonising research, and focusing really on systems change that allow us to uphold the rights of Indigenous peoples and allow that to flourish, so that we can use that Indigenous knowledge to indeed do what I think it really offers us, that is to make a significant difference to the planetary health. Thank you very much.
Malapito Luis, ni sampuro vinaka, whawhetai lava. Just to for your knowledge, actually, Luis is a Tongan, so she is indigenous in many ways. But Luis has been such a brave voice, with undiluted commitment to uphold social equity and justice. And so we're very blessed to have you as part of our team, Louis. Thank you very much. So you have come and you have heard and you witnessed all this excellent korero, talking from the heart, sharing their experience, reflecting on the knowledge they have gathered over the years, their experience. So at this time, I will open it up and ask and allow you, any of you, to pose any question directly, or you can put it in the chat, and then maybe Lavinia will relate it. But please, let's open the floor and have a discussion. I think we have um, at least 20 or 25 minutes before we close. Malo, you just raise your hand, or you just talk. Anyone who have a question or a comments?
And William, they can ask any questions about the conference or the topic that we presented on, but also
Yes.
any feedback on what the forum, the Health Promotion Forum, can do better, or any new area of work in these very challenging times that they would like to, because this is about working together and always progressing and improving.
Yes, please feel free to have a good discussion with us and share your thoughts. Lavinia, was there any question come up there, Lavinia?
No questions, Liami. I've opened the chat for questions, but nothing so far.
Okay.
I have a question that I'd like to pose for Leanne.
Sure.
I'm particularly interested too in the field of technology, AI, and etc. in the development of health promotion, public health. I was very interested to see the use of drones, Leanne. I probably would have wanted to hear a bit more, but is that just a specific area where drones are being used, or is it used more widely?
No. So the drones project was my personal master's project, and I've extracted some of the data that's related to our talk for the purposes of our talk. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Happy to share more offline
Yes.
if you would like. Yes.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Wonderful.
Catch up soon. Thanks, Leanne.
Thank you for that. And it was great to hear of how, because usually we tend to think that Indigenous is just old-fashioned, backward, but to hear embracing the IT and the modern instrument and tools, that is really, really great. Maybe I'll just post this question here, and this is specifically to related to what Leanne was talking about, and I'm fascinated with the idea of giving personhood to inanimate, to rivers and mountain and things like that, and I'm just I'm curious to know how does many of the Maori people think about, or are there objections or about that idea? Leanne, please.
It's such a good question, Viliami. I don't know that there are objections to the idea. I think how I understand it to have come about, or the whakapapa of it, has been through the claim settlement process. So the establishment of the Waitangi Tribunal back in 1975, I think 50 years ago now. And Māori have had an opportunity to share their grievances with the Crown through this process. And as I understand it, the claims settlement process has included the development of the law and placing those precious maunga or awa, as they are to those particular iwi who have settled, into that, for want of a better term, claims package or claims settlement. So it's all been a part of that entire process.
Right. Yeah, I think to me it's just another way of helping those who do not understand. I suppose for us, the indigenous people, the Maori, I'm sure, you don't need to be told, you don't need to put it into law, but to allow the wider public to appreciate that. And I think this is really great because, we all hear of the term that it's Mother Nature. And I'm, from Rotorua, one of the speakers, of course, there really made a statement that you wouldn't dare say anything nasty about your mother. Of course, all our mothers are not perfect, but we do not dare say anything or do anything bad that will, have a negative impact on our mother. And to have that sense on the rivers and on the environment, which is very true because they are sustaining us, and we have to have that certain level of respect to them. Yeah, yeah. No, 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 I think this is really, really wonderful. We haven't done that in other Pacific islands, but I think they have a lot to learn from us here in Aotearoa.
Yeah, Liami, I'd like to add that Tonga is working on that concept of being one with Mother Nature, especially Tonga being a small nation. A large part of its territory is the ocean, and there's work being done to recognize some of the marine species, focusing now on whales, to be acknowledged as a living being having the same rights as humans, to some degree have rights. So that concept is spreading, and the river Seine in France, in Paris, is being recognized similar to the Whanganui River. So the rest of the world is catching up, learning from Aotearoa. In Australia, there is a move, although slow, towards that same direction of acknowledging the central role of the river, of rivers in all the states to feed and protect and to beautify and to provide overall well-being to not only Indigenous peoples, but all Australians. So, and they acknowledge that they learned from us, which is wonderful. I just want to elaborate what I said earlier, Liami, that, our participants can ask not only about our workshop, but also about the conference. And also they might have good ideas. It's the end of the current financial year, literally today, and we are drafting our work plan. It's an opportunity perhaps for members of the forum and members of the workforce to tell us, you're doing well in this part, perhaps think of these areas. So that was a third part of what I mentioned earlier. But I would like to add about the future after Abu Dhabi. Looking into the future, there will be a legacy statement from Abu Dhabi. It's being worked on, finalized. In the next month or so, there will be a legacy statement similar to the Rotorua twin legacy statements. And as you mentioned earlier, that statement from Abu Dhabi will be influenced by the Rotorua statement. It has now become a strategic process of forward thinking and enabling statements at the end of this series of conferences to shape the direction of IUHPE. As I mentioned in my brief presentation, planetary health and Indigenous knowledge are now at the core of the strategic direction and some of the key documents shaping the work of IUHPE, but also contributed to WHO as well. And so the future is looking very bright. In terms of leadership, it's wonderful and it's an honor for HPF to have a second member from Aotearoa on the global executive board of IUHPE. And those who have followed our stories and our news, Leanne is a member of the executive board elected in Abu Dhabi. And so we will continue our leadership, but also it's about preparing for the next generation. I'm not getting any younger, Liami. I'm aging with grace, I hope. But we are building our capacity to continue the work that has been done in the last 10 years.
That is wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, and WHO has invited the Health Promotion Forum to continue to be part of the traditional medicine global framework that is being developed, led by India. So there will be a conference in December, and we participated in the last conference. And so our Rongoa and our indigenous knowledge on medicine in the Pacific region should contribute towards that. But also on the expert advisory group on health promotion and well-being, we have been invited to be a member of that advisory group as well. So for the participants, we are doing some good work on our behalf, building towards the future. So feel free to, for the participants to ask questions and provide advice.
Yeah. It's good to see you, Tai Wharongo. You have been quiet, but it's good to see you here, and I see you. And I'm just wondering, and this is probably more related to Louis, the contribution that you have done, Louis, in supporting Pacific and non-indigenous, and the indigenous kaupapa is tremendous. I'm just wondering, I was trying to think if we can clone more Louis signal, because I think there is a lot of goodness that come out with the relationship that we have built with people like yourself. And I'm just wondering, Sione, maybe one of the things that we've got to think about, that we also need to make sure that we continue to have people like Louis to support us, because it's very, very important. We have to be practical, and this world is still pretty much dominated by the white people, unfortunately, or for whatever. But and it's just to recognize and acknowledge the great contribution that people like Louis. It's just not just Louis, but we know Louis. So I just wanted to say that.
I have a question here, Biliami, from Tai Whaalongo. This is for you, Leanne. Talofa Lava, I'm interested in the butterfly app and whether there is any similar apps being developed, or is this concept being developed here in New Zealand and our Pacific nations?
Such a great question. And I had the same one when I came home too. So what I've managed to do so far is have a look on the App Store and see the butterfly app there. And I know that Sione, and if we prompt him a little bit, I know that he's got the contact details for Dr. Nelly, who did the presentation in Abu Dhabi. So perhaps I can link up with her and find out a little bit more information. But I'm very interested too.
Yeah, thank you for that.
It's also, sorry,
mm,
Biliami, I was just going to
no,
say to
sure.
Leanne that the butterfly app, I think, is also a great way of taking services to the people out in the rural areas that couldn't otherwise access these services. So, in terms of
Absolutely.
equity and helping poorer communities. So
Really amazing. And
yeah.
she was demonstrating that all you need to do is plug it into an iPhone or a smartphone and you're pretty much ready to go.
Amazing.
Amazing. Yeah. There is another question further up too, I see, I think probably for you, Sione, from Sarah. She says, I'm thinking that the IUHPE position statement on planetary health promotion would be great to bring to a public health network I support, maybe with questions about how do we practically implement the recommendations, or about how to utilise this to influence National Public Health Service? Any suggestions or thoughts for this?
Great question. As I said before, the statement on planetary health and indigenous knowledge and values are based largely on the Rotorua twin documents and other related documents, the indigenous rights of Declaration of the Indigenous Rights of Indigenous Peoples that Luis mentioned earlier. Also the Geneva Charter for Wellbeing. The how-to part, we have done our contribution by running workshops over the last 2 years on planetary health and well-being, but using some of the recommendations from the position statement. And that resource is free for everyone to take up. Happy to collaborate. The forum is happy to collaborate with other members of the forum, other organizations to use those tools for in a number of ways, from training to policy work to shaping health promotion programs in the communities, and so on and so forth. But that will be a good start. Sorry, I did not quite get the name, but happy to continue this conversation offline. Just email me or you, Leanne, and we'll pick it up from there.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sione. And I think that is part of the things that, as we did after Rotorua, is to compile those information and share them widely. And we even had time and opportunity to run workshop and training, or share it in venues and opportunities that we have to meet the other organization, especially those who are members of the Health Promotion Forum. And I'm sure we'll be able to continue to do that. We are coming up to the end of our session, and unless there is any other burning question or comments, but I would invite you to please continue to send in your comments, emailed, contact Lavinia or Jess with the information that you received about this session, and we'll be happy to continue and maintain connection to share other information about Health Promotion Forum and other work and anything that we might be able to be of assistance to you personally or to your group or your whānau. Yeah. For the speakers, do you want to have any other thing that you want, Luis and Sione and Leanne? Any final word before we close?
Nothing from me, thank you, Viliami.
Just like to say thanks very much for the opportunity to speak to everybody, and keep well and try and keep the spirits up. It's time for optimism, despite the challenges that we're facing.
Yep, we have to. Well, that's the good thing about being at the bottom, because the only way is up. There's no other way, but we have to rise up and face the situation. Yes, but so let me just convey our sincere thanks to all our speakers and all the information they have shared. I'm sure they will have this information available in one way or another, one form or another, for wider sharing. And I'm sure you'll hear from the Health Promotion Forum team themselves on how to access it. But in any way, contact Lavinia or Jess for any further information you wish to know about Health Promotion Forum. So thank you very much to Sione and Luis and Leanne for the excellent presentations. And I think the message that we need to go back with now that we know that our indigenous knowledge is such that our relationship is most important. It's not just a list of facts, but they are facts with spirit and soul, meaning and relevance to people, especially to people our whānau and people that we're living with. It's not just the things that are independent of. It's not just a head knowledge, but it's something that really have real life impact in everybody's daily living. So thank you to every one of you who spent some time in sharing, and we would like and we'll be very keen to hear from you in some other time each one. Let me just close with karakia. Tō mawhawhi o mau whawhetai atu. We thank you so much for being with us. We ask you, Lord, that you continue to guide us and be with us as we move forward. Let us be encouraged that you are always there for us and the future is bright with you. In the mighty name we thank you. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.